Hi everybody, how are you? So my name is Julian Rodriguez-Drix. Some of you might know me professionally, but I am here tonight as a resident of Washington Park and as a board member of the Environmental Justice League of Rhode Island. I just want to apologize on behalf of the sound system setup that we have here. We reserved the space quite a while ago, but for whatever reason we were locked out until right when it was supposed to start, and the equipment we were supposed to have didn't get set up. So apologies if it's hard for those of you in the back to hear. If it's easier and you want to come down, we do have some more spaces in the table up here in the front if you wanted to come to be a little bit closer. So I'm just going to give a really brief introduction, just as a resident who's living in this area. I've lived in Washington Park for the past 3 years. Was in Silver Lake before that, and have just been doing some research. I like geeking out on research and looking at my environment wherever I am. And so I've been doing some research, and as part of the Environmental Justice League, we've been kind of looking into what are the environmental justice issues around Providence across the board and around Rhode Island. So I just wanted to give you all a quick little kind of summary and overview and a visual tour of some of the sites that you might pass by every day for those of you who live in this area and might see but not really think about. It's just part of our environment. It's part of the things that we see as we go to school, as we go to work, as we walk, play, bus, or drive past them. But there's a lot that's going on in that part. Barbara gave kind of a good example, a kind of overview of some of the air pollution risks, some of which are things we're more concerned about than others. But I just wanted to give you a quick kind of visual tour of some of the things you can see here. So we go back to the beginning and kind of go through them one by one. So here we go. So the one up at the top here, these are some maps from Provport. So there's two different parts of the port. Port of Providence in general extends all the way down from the hurricane barrier, which is where the 195 bridge crosses over by the power station. That's kind of the iconic image of downtown Providence. And then it's everything east of basically Allen's Ave, and some of it extends up into Eddy Street, kind of east of 95. So coming down that whole length from there, all the way down to the Cranston line, basically. So it's a pretty long stretch of area. The whole part is known as Port of Providence. Provport is one part of it that's privately run by an organization, and that's in this area that's sticking out here. So some of them have tenants. The two that are down here I want to draw attention to. Some of the ones, there's a number of, you'll notice a lot of white tanks. And I believe that Kurt Spalding from EPA will be talking about some of the issues around the tanks later on. There's different things stored in different tanks. The ones that have the domes topped to them are a little bit different than the ones that have flat tops. So this dome, the dome one you can see here in the front here, and the one right in front of it there is Univar. So Enterprise and Univar are called risk management plan sites. So an RMP site are sites that have a certain quantity of a hazardous, toxic, or flammable substance that are regulated by the EPA above a certain level. And those substances need to be, there's danger of risk. So there's only 15 sites in Rhode Island that are risk management plan sites. The two largest of those sites are here in Provport, in the Port of Providence, near where Save the Bay is, near where Johnson and Wales is. And they're right next to each other. So Enterprise is a propane facility. If you have more than 30,000 pounds of propane, you qualify as a risk management site. They have 77 million pounds of propane stored there. The one next to it is Univar. It's a chemical wholesaler and distributor. They have 7 different substances that are regulated as RMP regulated substances. And they have, I believe it's around 30 million pounds total of those different substances. Each one is regulated at around 30,000 pounds. So really, really, really large quantities. And they're right next to each other. And they have to look at what are the potentials for an off-site release. So when we hear about emergency preparation later, some of the potential disaster scenarios that might happen or could happen that we need to prepare for and protect ourselves from and prevent, obviously prevent, first of all. But the Univar site has a hazard radius of 14 miles. So they've got large quantities of chlorine, ammonium, anhydrous ammonia, formaldehyde, and a couple other regulated substances as well. So if there were to be a catastrophic release that could spread for 14 miles, obviously the closer you are to that, the more dangerous it is. And these chemicals can interact with the flammable substances. So if you have something like propane right next to it, the propane can make something like chlorine burn hotter and faster and spread farther as well. So you need to look at how these things can interact with each other. And then the white dome that's farther down on the bottom right here, it's kind of hard to see. So that's Enterprise, there's Univar, and that one there is an LNG tank. It's existing storage there, and you'll hear more about that later on tonight. Next slide. So here's some images from it. There's a lot that goes on in that port, some of which is just normal everyday stuff and kind of good union jobs. Others of it are things that we need to be a bit more concerned about that are potentially toxic or hazardous. And then also in terms of climate change, this whole area is right in the floodplain on the wrong side of the hurricane barrier and has a lot of fossil fuels that come through there. So coal, oil, natural gas, a lot of the things that cause climate change are in really large quantities right through there. So there's a big pile of coal next to the propane, next to the chemicals. There's some scrap metal facilities here. Next slide. So for those of you who drive up and down Allen's Ave, you might recognize this one here on the top left. The Motiva oil storage facility. There's a number of different oil terminals where they connect boats and trains and trucks, kind of bringing in the oil in various forms and then transporting it out. As you're coming along 95, you can see this kind of around that bend on Douglas Ave. There's, piles of coal and the Univar facility being offloaded right there. As you're driving up and down Allen's Ave, you can see that on both sides of the road as you're kind of at the lowest in the road right there. Next slide. And these also go with the residential streets. So on the top here you can see this is a tanker truck. There's a lot of trucks carrying oil. This one here is carrying liquefied natural gas, so it's LNG in a super cool tank. And it's making that turn right on from A Street onto Douglas Ave. So basically right out the corner in front right here. These kind of trucks, if you stand on the corner there for 10 minutes, you'll see any number of these kind of large trucks passing through all the time. So when Barbara was talking about near highway, near road emissions of these kind of trucks, that's what you see a lot of, right at the corner out here. Next slide. This is a map of storm tools. It's a state storm system looking at what a hurricane like what happened in 1938, a 100-year storm. So on average would happen every 100 years, although with climate change that's becoming more and more frequent potentially. And this whole area would potentially be underwater from the storm surge, and it's on the wrong side of the hurricane barrier, so the hurricane barrier would not protect the port in particular from any of that. Next slide. And here again are some more of just the sites. These are kind of, when we think about waterfront access, different neighborhoods around Providence. The east side has, you have Fox Point, you've got India Point, downtown, some really beautiful waterfront access and recreation areas. South Providence does not have that. When we talk about waterfront, we see barbed wire fences and truck terminals and fuel depots, scrap metal facilities, things like that. And next. And so this last one here, and then I'll close up and pass it on. This is from the EPA data for toxic release inventory. So these are sites that have emitted various levels of toxic substances that are regulated, so the TRI facilities. These are all the ones in Providence. As you can see, there's a few in different places around Providence. There's, I believe, 15 in Providence. 12 out of the 15 are in the port-related area. So kind of starting at the power station downtown, and then there's a big cluster of them in Washington Park, as you can see from the green dots on the map down there. And I just wanted to close with sharing a little bit of data for those of you who like geeking out on data like I do. We do have these handouts in the back of the table in the corner there if you want to look them over and read in more detail. The two data sources we are looking at were the toxic release inventory and a new EPA tool called EJ Screen, which I think Kurt might refer to later on. The EJ Screen tool looks at various environmental indicators and compares them with demographic indicators. So it looks at where the concentration of hazardous materials or various environmental problems are in relationship to a number of different demographic groups, such as communities of color, low-income populations, linguistically isolated, meaning non-English speaking, populations under 5, etc. And so in these various variables that they're looking at, when you combine the demographics and the environmental indicators, then they then compare those to how it compares to the rest of the state, how it compares to the rest of the region in New England, and how it compares to the rest of the country. And for those EJ Screen indicators, this is what we kind of, when we looked at this, we said we need to have a forum and bring people together to look at this more. Every single one of the environmental indicators that they're looking at that are available are within the top 6%, the top 6 percentiles.
Sorry, can you try to use a language that's more easier to understand?
Thank you. Yes, yeah, talking data and all that, it's easy to thank you for that. So, trying to break this down, what this means, environmental indicators and indices and data sets, basically looking at where are there environmental pollutions, risk, things that are hazardous to our health in areas that are communities of color, our low-income communities, have a lot of young children, and where are these things at risk? So for example, one of the ones that they were looking at was lead paint. Where is the lead paint concentrated? And so with the lead paint indicator, that's the, for where is the lead paint compared to kind of demographically, when you compare us to the rest of EPA regions, so all of New England, we're in the 95th percentile, which means that 95% of the rest of New England is better off, and there's only 5% that's worse off than the area that's right around the port. When you look at it in terms of what they call TSDF facilities, so toxic storage and disposal facilities, these are hazardous waste handlers, processors, storage of hazardous materials. We're in the 99th percentile compared to the rest of the region, meaning that 99% of the rest of New England is better off, and 1% has more. So for every single one of the ones that they have on here, this area by the port is in the top 5%. So it's at high risk, and that's why we wanted to have this kind of forum and bring in these experts to talk about it, to answer questions, and to have this forum. So thank you all for being here, and I'll pass it on to the next speaker.